If you have ever hired a virtual assistant and it hasn't worked out for you, if you've ever wanted to hire a virtual assistant, but you keep telling yourself that you can't do it yet because you got to clean up that back end first, clean the house before the maid comes over, then I want you to listen to this entire episode because while those instincts feel logical, they're actually what's keeping you stuck. Hey, I'm Brooke. I'm a strategic operator and an online business manager for women whose businesses are working, but costing them everything to run. And this is the podcast with Brooke, where we talk about what's actually happening in that back end of your business and what to do about it. So let's get into it. Today, I want to talk about something that I see happen constantly and that no one is actually talking about in an honest way. Let's say you hire a virtual assistant. She's great. She seems great. She seems reliable. She seems very skilled and eager to help you. And 3 months later, you find yourself just as overwhelmed as you did before, maybe even more overwhelmed, and you really can't figure out why. So you try again. You hire a different virtual assistant and you're getting the same result. Eventually, you're starting to wonder, what's the problem here? Are there no good virtual assistants out here? Am I the problem? Am I just not good at delegating? Maybe support is just not something that's going to work for me in this particular business, right? Maybe that's what you're thinking. But here's what I see when I look at that situation. You're not the problem. The virtual assistant usually isn't the problem. The setup wasn't in place first. So here's what usually happens. You're going to hire a virtual assistant and you're not going to have a clear picture of what you actually need her to do. So the virtual assistant shows up, she's ready to work, she spends a few weeks or maybe even months asking you a lot of questions. And you spend a few weeks or even months having to answer those questions. And suddenly that thing that was supposed to give you support, supposed to give you time back, is actually adding time, more time than it actually was before you hired this virtual assistant. And then there's another version of this, and this is where you actually do know what you need her to do, but those tasks exist entirely inside your own head. And there's no documented process. There's no guide. There's no way to show her how to do it. And that makes complete sense to you because you've built this business and done that in a way that's worked for you up until this point. But we can't have things existing only in your head anymore. So what happens is that virtual assistant is kind of working blind. She's trying to guess how this might work or having to listen to you over explaining things and trying to figure things out. And then you end up redoing all that work anyway. And I'm slowly taking those tasks back because it seems way easier to actually do them yourself than to have to transfer them to someone else and explain how to do it. And none of that's the virtual assistant's fault. And none of that is your fault. What's happening is we have a preparation problem, and that problem has a fix. I want to be really clear about this because I don't want to say that you have to have everything perfectly organized before that virtual assistant arrives. What I do mean is that having enough clarity about what you need so that you can hand it off and have it come back to you the way you wanted is what needs to happen. And that clarity starts with one question. What are the things in your business that happen regularly and predictably that don't require you actually to do them? Not one-off projects, not big creative decisions, and not the things that require your specific voice and your specific judgment, but the things that happen every week, every launch, every time a new client comes in. Those things follow a pattern and they exist in your head right now. Those are the things a VA can take off your hands. Those are the things that, when are properly handed off, actually create the relief that you're looking for. But here's what I find when I ask that question. Most women can't actually answer it. Not because those tasks don't exist, they absolutely do, but because they've never had to pull them out of their heads and put them somewhere else before. They've just been doing them automatically as part of running their business. And there was nothing wrong with that. You were building the plane as you were flying through the air, building this business. But now it's time to hand off those tasks. And until those tasks are named and documented, you really can't hand them off effectively, not in a way that's going to give you your time and mental clarity back. I know that an SOP is one of those business terms that sounds far more complicated than it actually is. So let me actually tell you what I mean when I say that. This is a standard operating procedure, and it's just a document that says, here's how you get this thing done, step by step. Clear enough that someone who has never done that step or that task before can actually follow it and get it right. And that's it. It does not have to be fancy. It does not have to be 15 pages. In fact, please don't make it 15 pages. It just needs to be clear. And the reason it matters so much when you're bringing a virtual assistant into this is without it, the knowledge is living in your head. And when that knowledge lives inside your head, you're always going to be the bottleneck. No matter how good that virtual assistant is, no matter how hard she works, she can't read your mind. And you're going to spend more time answering questions and checking that work than you would if you had just done it yourself. If the knowledge lives somewhere she can't access it, she can't do the task properly. But with an SOP, the knowledge lives somewhere she can access it and she can do the task and she can do it consistently. She can do it without interrupting you every 5 minutes and you get your time back. Here's something else I want to say about SOPs because I think it's really important. You don't have to build them all before you hire someone. You can build them for things that you're handing off first. Just start there. Document the reoccurring tasks that you do every day, the things that happen every week or every launch, and get those out of your head and into a format someone else can follow. That is enough to start, and that is enough to make a real difference in how the VA hire actually feels and how that success turns out for both of you. I want to paint you a picture of what this actually looks like when it's working. You're hiring a VA. She has a clear list of recurring tasks ready to hand off. She has a simple, clear documentation of each of those tasks. The VA comes in, reads the documentation, asks maybe a handful of clarifying questions in the first week, and then gets the work done. You're not having to answer questions all day. She's not having to redo things. You're not having to come in and take those tasks back because it feels easier. You're getting to do the work that actually requires you to show up, that creative work, the client work, the work that you built this business to do. And that, my friend, is when the relief comes. Not eventually, but like super quickly. That's what a VA hire is supposed to feel like. That's what it does feel like when the setup is right. And I want to be honest with you about something. Getting to that setup is not always something you can do alone, especially when you're already overwhelmed, especially when the tasks are so embedded in the way that you work that pulling them out and documenting them feels like one more enormous thing on an already enormous list of things that you have to do. And that's exactly the kind of thing that I help with. I come in and look at what you have. I help identify what needs to be documented and how, and I get into a state that actually looks ready to hand off. But before any of that can happen, we need to start with what's actually happening in that back end of your business right now. Because the setup for a virtual assistant hire starts with understanding what's there, what's missing, and what needs to exist before anyone new comes in. To be honest with you, sometimes we're able to automate so much stuff behind the scenes, you don't even need to hire somebody right now, but you're set up to do it later when that makes sense for you. So here's what I want you to take away from today. You don't need to clean the house before the maid comes over. You don't need to get organized before you hire help. You don't need to build out your entire SOP library before you bring someone in. And you don't need to have everything figured out before you ask for support. What you do need is someone to come in and look at what you already have there, to see what you're working with, to identify what needs exist before a virtual assistant hire will actually give you any relief, and to build a clear path with you to get you there. And that is exactly what I built the backend audit for. It's 90 minutes together with you and me where we look at the whole backend, what's creating the drag, and we build you a prioritized path forward, including what needs to be in place before you bring anyone new in. The link is in the show notes if you want to take advantage of that backend audit, or you can comment the word audit on any one of my Instagram posts and I'll send it to you directly. I want to thank you for being here, and I'll see you next week.